global markets wrestle with inflation and geopolitical shifts, Malaysia is charting its own course with the 13 Malaysia Plan, a bold 611 billion ringgit strategy to reshape development. The goals and figures are clear, but behind the numbers lie deeper questions. Will these investments create meaningful jobs and raise wages? Can we balance fiscal discipline with the urgent need for infrastructure, education, and social protection? And as we pivot toward high-value industries and digital transformation, how do we ensure no one, especially low-income and rural communities, gets left behind? This is Money Matters. Hello and good evening. You're tuned into TV3, where you can also stream on Tonton. I'm Zahir Kelvinong Abdullah, and joining us today is Datuk K. Yogiswaran, non-resident senior fellow, Malaysian Institute of Economic Research, MIER. Datuk, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kelvin.
Can I start off by asking you, when the Prime Minister announced the 13 Malaysia Plan, he emphasized a lot on good governance. Why do you think this is so?
Thank you, Kelvin. It's a fantastic question. In fact, if you look at previous plans, there's mention about good governance, and normally it comes at the end of the chapter. But this time, you can see the way Prime Minister has presented himself. He places good governance as a priority. I totally agree with that. Basically, because without good governance, you're not going to be able to achieve anything. There are going to be leakages in what you do. There could be mismanagement, poor prioritization. So governance is fantastically very, very important, key to achieving all the goals you've set behind. If you do not have good governance, the plan which you have will not be implementable. You may not achieve the optimal results from a plan when you don't have good governance. Efficient implementation is very important, efficient monitoring is important, measuring of results is important, and adjusting plans as it goes along is important. So accountability is very important. So governance, as mentioned, is a key thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, can we move on to economic strategy and investment? So the 13 Malaysia Plan basically outlines 611 billion ringgit in investment, so that's a pretty hefty amount, right? So how will this translate into tangible benefits, especially for the average Malaysian, especially in terms of job creation and wage growth?
If you unpack this 611 billion, I mean this massive amount, what directly comes from the government, federal government, is 430 billion. Then you have 120 billion coming from the GLCs and GLICs, and another 61 billion coming through public-private partnership, privatization programs. So it's a big budget. But when you talk about the 430 billion directly from federal government, it will definitely go for upliftment of the livelihood of the people. And if you dissect that total amount of money, you find that 52% goes to the economic sector. That means economic activities, boosting economic growth. Specifically, 50% goes to that. Another 30% goes to social upliftment. This is where we talk about housing, rural development, better healthcare facilities, better education facilities, so social. And security by 11% and 4% for administration. That's where the money is going. And if you talk about how do the average Malaysians gain from this, if you look at the money which is going to spend, the 430 billion directly, that is going to be spent on building more affordable houses. They talk about building 1 million houses by 2035. Then you talk about education. They've set aside 67 billion for education alone. That basically goes to improving the quality of education, improving and upgrading schools and building new schools, building new hospitals, flood mitigation projects. So these things, building rural roads, these things are really going to help the people, will touch the people. Mm-hmm. Therefore, people have better access to education, better access to quality education, better access to medical care, better access to housing, shelter. So these are things which are really going to touch the people. And if you talk about where it is going to go as far as the private sector is concerned, the focus then shifts to the 120 billion, which is coming from the GLC and GLICs, the privatization projects, and those are the ones which are going to more directly generate employment and increase incomes. And you talk about the government going into high value and high growth sectors. This is all going to come from there. And this is going to create high value jobs and high-income jobs.
So can we talk about Malaysia targeting 4.5% and 5.5% annual GDP growth for the 13 Malaysia plan? So what are the key macroeconomic levers that the government is pulling to ensure that this is sustainable, especially with global uncertainties nowadays?
Right. So you stated right to the point. In fact, in the context, we're actually entering the 13 Malaysia plan in a very uncertain environment, unprecedented actually. And if you talk about uncertainty, of course, the first uncertainty is caused by Trump policies as far as tariffs are concerned, which has actually changed the whole dynamics of trade, whole dynamics of flow investments, and upset the financial markets. And then you have the geopolitical risks in several countries, being Israel, Gaza, and also at the moment in what do you call it? So sorry.
Ukraine.
Ukraine, yeah. And so given that the 4.5% to 5.5% growth target is something very decent, very good actually. And if you talk about growth levers, if you look at the figures, you find that most of the growth is going to be driven by the private expenditure. That means to say private investments and as well as private consumption. People spending the money is going to come from there. And private sector investing in projects is going to come from there. And also from the construction sector. When you go to supply side, it's construction sector. But before going to construction sector, even when we talk about external economy, that means exports and so forth. Although you talk about volatility in the external market, we still think exports will grow decently. We're talking about gross exports, about 5.8% growth. That's very good. And when you talk about supply side, the sectors are going to be manufacturing, they're going to be services, and going to be construction. They are going to drive from the supply side. And if you look at the plan, that mentioned about green economy, the blue economy, going into high growth sectors, in semiconductors. I mean, there are a lot of things within the plan which are going to drive growth. And therefore, we're confident that the 4.5%, 5.5%, barring any really crisis situation, will be achievable.
But this can be revised year upon year.
Yes, of course. You have to, especially when you look at the volatile environment today, you do not know what is going to happen the next month. So, I mean, the government, as you see, is always not stuck with the figure. And you see a revision which takes place sometimes every year. So when the opportunity comes in the budget, and even the central bank revises its figures as you go along, when you get more figures.
Right. Okay, can we talk about fiscal discipline and debt, right? The plan also aims to reduce fiscal deficit to below 3% and cap public debt at 60% of GDP. Looking at this, Dato', how realistic are these targets and what trade-offs can be involved here?
Okay, first thing is, the short answer is, these targets are achievable. First thing, we have to go back to the trend, how government is committed to this. If you look at the past, even during the Asian financial crisis, it was very high, and the government committed to bring down fiscal deficit, and it was able to bring it down. And here again, you've seen the trend. Since 2021, if you talk about fiscal deficit to GDP was 6.4%. The following year it was brought down to 5.5%, 5%, 4.8%, and this year 4.2%, and this year we are planning to go to 3.8%. So you can see the trend. The government is committed and is willing to do it, and the government has also the mechanisms within itself to commit itself to do it. And some of the most important things which are taking place within the government is the Public Finance and Fiscal Discipline Act, which has come into place, which actually provides a legal framework for the government to commit and do what it has to do.
Right.
And you also have the Procurement Act coming into play very soon. And these are things which will provide the government the option to really do efficient expenditure, transparency, reduce leakages. So, and even on the revenue side, when you talk about revenue side, there are a lot of things which are being done. You can see the recent expansion in the sales and services tax, which may not not everybody happy, but that has to be done. And even if you look at other revenue measures, you can see which the government is taking and is really taking. For example, subsidy rationalization, targeting its subsidies, so that while the government is consolidating its finances, the people are not affected.
Okay, now to hold that thought, we've just got to go for our first break. We're talking to MIER Non-Resident Senior Fellow, Dr. K. Yogiswaran. Right after this, stay with us. You're back with us on Money Matters, and we're talking to MIER Non-Resident Senior Fellow, Dr. K. Yogiswaran, with us right here in the studio. Now, Dato, before we left, we were talking about fiscal discipline and debt. So how does the 13th Malaysia Plan balance between fiscal consolidation and the need for expansive public spending in areas like infrastructure and social protection?
It is actually walking a very tightrope. You are stuck between having to continue to grow, continue to ensure that the growth momentum is there, generates income, so they're able to collect revenue. But at the same time, consolidation is important. If you saw the period post-pandemic, I mean, naturally our debt level went up, our fiscal deficit went up because a lot of assistance which had to be given to keep the economy going and to make sure people are well taken care of, for them to continue, so that their lives is not affected very badly. But this balance is very, very necessary. So there is going to be some kind of trade-off in the short term. But what you gain in the medium and long term benefits will be much, much larger than that. Especially if you look at the current environment, which is so volatile, the economic environment is so volatile, and you talk about possibility of emergence of diseases and so on. So I think there are a lot of risks out there. In this kind of circumstances, the government must be able to build certain reserves and buffers for itself during, rainy days, you know. So this consolidation is very important, but at the same time ensuring that there is continued growth. Mm-hmm. And the government has done a fantastic job at this, because having shown the trend of consolidation and having committed to a target of reducing fiscal deficit 3% and debt to 60%. At the same time, providing 611 billion is not an easy task. So it's a fantastic job done in terms of really looking at how prudent expenditure is going to be, taking every dollar to the maximum. And so I think that's a great job. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, can we talk about the labour market and income now? The 13th Malaysia Plan, of course, aims to boost labour productivity and shift towards higher value industries. How will this transformation impact wage structures, and what safeguards are in place to ensure inclusive growth, especially for low income and informal sector workers?
Certainly, the strategy for increasing growth and generating the growth momentum is a shift and the transition into high value and high growth industries. And we talked about this generating almost 1.2 million jobs in two sectors, manufacturing and digital, as you go along. And of course, the whole idea is to raise everyone's income. At the same time, there's also fear that people will be left behind. But looking at that, the government has ensured that these people are also taken care. They also have to move along. That's why when you talk about development, is everybody feeling progress in their lives, feeling better, is just not only one segment of society. So for that purpose, there are several safeguards. For instance, when you're talking about high value and high growth industries, you're talking about creating domestic linkages, linking up with SMMES, the micro and medium, small and medium scale industries, linking up with them. They should be able to be your sources of input. They should be able to be your domestic supply chain. So capacity building the strength is very important, and that the government is committed. So you're not going to see massive increase in income and people being left behind. And of course, to address this, the government again provides a support system. We're spending so much money on education, especially we're talking about re-emphasizing TVET education, technical vocational education. And this is really going to create a level playing field. And of course, besides that, of course, you have other things, income measures, for example, in the labor market, where the government is committed to gradually increasing the minimum wage level. And they also have measures to strengthen the wage council to ensure that the disparity in incomes is reduced among people. So there are several measures already in place. And we talk about the safety net and social security for the people is also in place and is being strengthened. So these are things which will ensure that the low-income group is not taken care of, but they also move along and also benefit from these new technology advancements and the new sectors we are going into.
Right. Do you think our digitalization, especially where, like you mentioned, the macro industries, the SMEs, whatever, we are on track in terms of bringing them to the forefront of digitalization?
I think the government is doing the right thing. Even if you look at all these strategic plans, you talk about digitalization economy blueprint, it talks about also the micro and small medium enterprises. They're not left behind because they have to play a role. You cannot have a dichotomy. So they need them as much as the large companies need the small companies as much. So that's taken. And if you look at the blueprints, there are specific strategies for this purpose.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about SMEs, like you mentioned right just now, and of course regional development. So as you mentioned, SMEs are central to Malaysia's economy. So what specific support mechanisms under the 13 Malaysia plan basically will help them scale, again, digitalize, and compete globally, not just in Malaysia?
Yeah. But you see, when you see the small micro and small medium enterprises, they have found a real place in the economy. And if we talk about the number of business units, they make up about 95% of the business units. So they are really a force. And today the contribution to GDP is about almost to 40%. And the 13 Malaysia plan wants the contribution to be increased to 50%. There are several targets set out for them. Even in terms of medium-sized firms, now they make up about 1.8% of the whole total business units. Now they want to make them 5%. So these are very important. And to achieve this, a lot of policies are in place. First, in terms of they're looking at change the whole business model, something very disruptive. So in that respect, they're talking about how you can realign SMEs from producing generic goods to producing customized goods which are high value. And also allowing them, facilitating them to get into the space of GLCs. GLCs at the moment dominate several industries and several places. The government is thinking of facilitating this movement of graduation of these SMEs into the sectors where GLCs are there. So this is going to give them opportunities. And as I mentioned earlier, uplifting SMEs really requires capacity building, skill development.
Yeah, but sorry, just to interrupt you there, but this sort of transition will take time, right?
Yeah, but it's not that we are starting point zero. A lot of things have already been done. So you're actually in motion. And the other aspect which they're really looking at as far as the SMEs is concerned is with respect to financing, which is very, very important. And they're also looking at how you can transform the financing model to be something more sustainable from normally grants given to them, but they're now talking about targeted finance. That means looking at what you really need, given your size, and stratified financing, different rates for different kind of projects. So these are some of the things which are already coming on board. There's quite a bit of information there, actually.
Okay. Hold that thought. We've got to go for a final break. We're talking to MIR Non-Resident Senior Fellow, Dato K. Yogis Varun. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us on Money Matters. Now, Dato, can we talk about sustainability and energy? The push for 35% renewable energy by 2030. Some analysts said this is very ambitious. What role will private sector investment and public policy play in achieving this target?
Certainly, it looks very ambitious. 35%. This is talking about actually installed capacity. We're not talking about generation, we're talking about installed capacity. Right at the moment, it's about 29%. So achieving another to 35%, I think over the next 5 years, is not something not doable. It's something doable, especially with the right strategies which are already in place. And if you talk about private sector has a very important role. If you look at the programs where they're talking about avenue for private sector investments and to increase installed capacity, you have programs like CREST, and then you have programs like CREAM, and then you have projects which allow for large-scale solar planting. And they're also encouraging now projects which talk about storage of battery energy. So these are projects which really allow for private sector investments and private sector actually is really needed so they can increase the installed capacity. And if you talk about public policy, the umbrella policy is provided for by the National Transition Roadmap, Energy Transition Roadmap. That provides the whole framework, and the public policy is there. Mm-hmm. So if you look at it in one sentence, I think it's ambitious, but I think it's doable.
Okay, yeah. Let's look at the broader vision. So the 13 Malaysia Plan is themed at reshaping development under the Madani framework. So in your view, what does a dignified and sovereign economy look like for Malaysia by 2030?
See, in 2030, I think it's an aspiration. It's very aspirational. One thing is certain that we want to achieve the high income nation status, which eluded us in 2020. And that looks very possible within our reach. And we also want to become the 30th largest economy in terms of economic size. And these are really good aspirations. But in our context, has always been, when you talk about high income nation, it is just not just money and it's just not income. We are built in a different society or different environment altogether. Philosophically, yeah. Mm-hmm. When you talk about dignified nation, a sovereign nation, we are talking about things like a society which has high moral and ethical values. We are talking about a society which is democratically matured. We are talking about a society where everybody enjoys the fruits of prosperity. It's not a society where the rich are very rich, so many percent make up 80% of the wealth. No, we have to move away from that. We are looking at a society where everyone, even if you're considered lower income, there'll be lower income, but even the lower income is able to enjoy a decent standard of living. Mm-hmm. Decent standard of living means to say you have equitable access to education, you got equitable access to medical care, you got equitable access to housing, good quality housing, and you got all the basic amenities at your hand. Beyond that, you should also have some money for some discretionary expenditure. That's the kind of decency we are talking about. That's dignified. And beyond that, when you talk about sovereign, we are talking about a nation which is able to stand up for itself, which stands tall in the global arena, and able to speak freely for ourselves on the principles we base. I mean, that's what we talk about, dignified and sovereign, in my context, if you ask me.
Right. So, looking at what some analysts have said, they've said that the 13 Malaysia Plan is overloaded with mega projects, but not so much on policy reforms. Do you agree with this statement?
I think what's happened is maybe the communication is still not out there yet. The plan has just been presented. I think when it's communicated, well communicated, then this idea of that the real reshaping of the economy will come out. Reshaping of the economy is obvious in several areas we could talk about. The transitioning into of course we talk about moving up the value chain, but this is slightly different. We talk about moving up the value chain in several other earlier plans, but these high value and high growth industries. We're talking about digitalization, we're talking about application of advanced technologies, AI. So these are things which are going to really shift things. And then for the first time, we're talking so much about governance. That's a real policy shift. And we're talking about, we talk about social justice. These are really new things. These embed a real change in the way we're thinking and the way the country is moving.
Okay.
So I think there's really changed there.
Right, that's good to know. Yeah. So like, okay, looking at the 13 Malaysia plan and the rest, right? Of course, some economists have also said that the 5-year plans like this are antiquated, right? But do we still need this sort of advanced planning for Malaysia as we grow? Okay.
I have a battle with that question many times. I just sometimes wonder whether we really need a 5-year plan, especially when things are so dynamic, the environment is so dynamic. I mean, it's really putting the agency in a spot to plan for 5 years. It's really very difficult to see the crystal ball and where it should go. But for a developing nation like us, we need to set some direction, some medium and long-term direction. You see, for example, if you were just doing firefighting, I mean, there are a lot of crises happening, there are a lot of turbulence happening. If you're just doing firefighting, you're just going to stay there. You have to you have to have a long-term vision. You have to have a medium-term vision where you want to move to. So you may have certain disruptions along the way, but you still have the eye on the ball.
Right.
That's why you need the 5-year plan, or the medium-term planning. But I think beyond that, if I may just say something on implementation, if you allow me, I think the implementation is very important. You've got a fantastic plan. Malaysia is one of the best plans everywhere. But implementation is very important. And again, in this plan, if you see what is different is, there's so much emphasis on implementation, which you've never seen before. But I think very important, and we talk about accountability, my suggestion will be to have a public report card every year. Because we talk about presentations to the parliament, we talk about presentation to the cabinet ministers, but that's not enough. I think public needs to know, because the public is the center of this whole development plan. So they need to know what is happening, what they're getting, how far we're moving, and what can be changed. So an annual report card will be something very good.
Yes, so that would also provide a lot of transparency and accountability.
Exactly.
Dato', thank you very much for appearing on Money Matters. It's been a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you, sir.
For the past half an hour, you've been with us on Money Matters. If you miss any part of today's show, you can always catch it up on Tonton. I'm Zahir Kelvin Ong Abdullah. Thank you for watching and have a great weekend.